My family thinks I survive on food stamps and broken dreams. For 12 years, they've looked right through me, using every Thanksgiving and Christmas to remind me that I am the ultimate disappointment. Last week, my mother called to invite me to an urgent family dinner. Her voice dripped with synthetic pity as she said, "Bring your resume, sweetie. Your brother is a CEO now, making $324,000 a year. Maybe he can find you a job cleaning his office." They thought they invited me over to watch my ultimate humiliation. They wanted to see me beg. What they don't know, what I have deliberately hidden from them, is that I am the sole owner of a $2.7 billion global tech empire. I decided to play their game one last time. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. But the moment I walked through their door, their jaws dropped. My name is Laura Bennett, and I am 34 years old. If you saw me walking down the street in my faded jeans, driving my dented 11-year-old sedan, you would probably look right through me. You might even feel a twinge of pity, assuming I was just another struggling soul drowning in bills and living paycheck to paycheck. And to be completely honest, that is exactly what my family thinks. For the last 12 years, they have comfortably categorized me as the ultimate failure of the bloodline. They whisper about me behind my back at family gatherings, using my apparent lack of stability as a cautionary tale. But appearance is a beautiful mask, and mine was crafted with extreme calculation. You see, while my mother and stepfather spent over a decade praising my younger brother Julian as a rising corporate prodigy, I was quietly building something else entirely. I didn't climb the corporate ladder, I built the foundation it sits on. Today, I am the sole, absolute owner of a global tech conglomerate valued at $2.7 billion. I have more liquid capital than my family could spend in 10 lifetimes. Yet, I deliberately kept my massive success a total secret from them. I wanted to see how they would treat me when they believed I had absolutely nothing to offer them. It was a social experiment born out of years of emotional neglect, and the results were devastatingly clear. Whenever I visited, they treated my poverty like an infectious disease. The phone call came on a rainy Tuesday evening, and the caller ID showed my mother's name. The second I pressed answer, her voice cut through the line, dripping with that synthetic pity I had grown to despise. "Laura, darling," she sighed dramatically, not even bothering to ask how I was doing. "You need to clear your schedule for this Friday. We are having an urgent family dinner, and your attendance is mandatory." When I asked what the occasion was, I could practically hear the smug grin spreading across her face. "Julian has just been appointed as the chief executive officer of a major regional firm. He's making $324,000 a year now, Julian. A real career." She paused, letting the numbers hang heavily in the air, waiting for me to choke on my own envy. "We know you're drowning out there on your own," she continued, her tone shifting into a calculated ambush disguised as charity. "So Julian wants you to bring your resume. He's putting together an intervention to fix your life, and maybe he can find a low-level position for you at his new office." They thought they were setting a trap to finally break my spirit and watch me beg for their financial scraps. I quietly smiled to myself, feeling the cold weight of the trap they were walking into. "I'll be there, Mom," I said softly. The moment I hung up, I called my global executive assistant. It was time to coordinate a massive, undeniable corporate exposure. I pulled up to my parents' suburban home on Friday evening, intentionally driving my dented sedan and parking it right in the center of the driveway. I wore a faded, inexpensive sweater and worn-out jeans, perfectly embodying the naive, broken girl they desperately expected to see. The moment I crossed the threshold and stepped into the living room, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The air became thick with judgment, and the passive-aggressive jabs began flying before I could even take off my coat. My stepfather looked me up and down with cold disdain, shaking his head at my clothes, while my mother made a dramatic show of sighing over my apparent lack of financial stability. "Look who finally decided to join the real world," Julian bragged, stepping forward with an insufferable air of arrogance. He deliberately adjusted the cuff of his shirt, making sure the light caught the glittering face of his brand-new, high-end luxury watch. "It must be tough living the way you do, Laura. But don't worry, tonight is all about turning your miserable lifestyle around." He smirked, swirling a glass of expensive wine, completely intoxicated by his newfound corporate authority. I stood there, shrinking my shoulders and playing my part to absolute perfection, letting their false sense of superiority reach its absolute peak. They truly believed they held all the power in the room, completely oblivious to the fact that they were standing in the presence of the woman who owned the ground beneath their feet. As we settled into the dining room, the heavy smell of roasted meat filled the air, but the tension at the table was suffocating. My mother and stepfather sat up straight, beaming with pride, while Julian practically radiated smug satisfaction. Before the main course was even fully served, Julian reached into his breast pocket, pulled out a folded agreement, and slid it across the table toward me. It landed against my plate with a soft thud. "Go ahead, Laura. Open it," he instructed, his voice carrying a patronizing edge that made my skin crawl. "Read the terms out loud for everyone." I unfolded the terms and looked down at a low-level, degrading assistant offer at his new firm, complete with a miserable salary, endless menial tasks, and a structure that essentially stripped me of any professional autonomy. "We are only doing this because we love you, Laura," my mother chimed in, leaning forward with her hands clasped tightly. "You need to accept this right now. It is the only way you will ever escape your pathetic lifestyle and finally amount to something in the real world." My stepfather nodded aggressively in agreement, muttering about how I should be deeply grateful for my brother's extraordinary charity. They all stared at me, holding their breaths, waiting for the tears or the desperate look of gratitude to appear on my face. Instead, I calmly set the text down, picked up my fork, and took a polite bite of my dinner. I let the silence stretch across the room, allowing their arrogance to reach its absolute peak before the trap snapped shut. A sharp, authoritative knock at the front door suddenly shattered the suffocating silence of the dining room. Julian frowned, checking his expensive luxury watch with an annoyed huff. "Are you expecting someone, Mom?" he asked, standing up to head toward the foyer. Before he could even reach the hallway, the front door was opened from the outside, and a team of 3 immaculately dressed corporate attorneys stepped directly into the house. They wore tailored black suits, radiated an undeniable aura of high-stakes legal power, and walked with absolute certainty. Julian's eyes widened, and a smug, confused smile crept back onto his face. He assumed these elite legal minds were a surprise delegation sent by his board of directors to deliver a special corporate update or an early executive bonus to celebrate his new appointment. "Ah, gentlemen, you must be looking for me," Julian bragged, stepping forward with his chest puffed out and his hand extended. "I am Julian, the new chief executive officer." The lead attorney didn't even blink. He completely ignored Julian's extended hand, walking straight past him without a single glance. Julian froze in place, his arm awkwardly hovering in midair as the entire legal team marched directly into the dining room. They stopped right at the edge of the table, turning their backs to my stunned parents. The lead attorney took off his glasses, looked directly at me, and bowed his head with immense professional respect. "Good evening, Chairwoman," he said clearly, his voice echoing through the stunned silence. "We have the structural transition parameters finalized and ready for your verbal authorization." The lead attorney projected the legal status of the empire onto the table, completely overshadowing Julian's pathetic offer. My mother gasped, and the color instantly drained from Julian's face as he saw the global corporate structures displayed right before him. "What is the meaning of this?" Julian stammered, his voice cracking under sudden panic. The attorney turned to him with a cold, professional smile. "Julian, the mid-sized regional firm that just appointed you as CEO was entirely bought out yesterday morning. It is now a tiny, wholly-owned subsidiary of global operations belonging to the Whitaker Group, a $2.7 billion tech empire entirely owned and controlled by your sister, Laura." Julian sank back into his chair, looking like he might vomit as the crushing reality hit him. The lawyers informed him that under the new corporate structure, his executive appointment required the absolute approval of the majority owner, me. I stood up, calmly looking down at my family, and began addressing Julian's actual professional history. "You thought I was the failure, Julian?" I said, my voice echoing in the dead silence. I listed his internal tracking data aloud, exposing the massive financial discrepancies, hidden debts, and failed investment schemes he had desperately tried to conceal from his previous employers to land this job. He wasn't a rising prodigy. He was an incompetent fraud who was drowning in financial ruin, and I held his entire destiny right in the palm of my hand. I looked directly at Julian and corporate counsel. "Your CEO appointment is officially revoked," I said calmly. I pushed his original, degrading assistant offer back across the table to him. "But I'm not heartless. I'll offer you the exact low-level position you designed for me. You can clean my subsidiary offices." My mother burst into desperate tears, frantically reaching for my hand. "Laura, please. We didn't know. We are family. We love you." My stepfather sat frozen, utterly shattered by the sudden shift in power. I looked at them one last time, completely unmoved by their sudden, pathetic display of family loyalty. "You only love the version of me that holds billions," I replied, pulling my hand away. I turned and walked out the door, leaving them to drown in the financial ruin of their own making. Today, I live peacefully in my coastal estate, accountable to no one. Now, I am curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. Thank you for watching until the end.